Good morning. My name is Damien, the tall, friendly atheist dad, from the Tall, Friendly Atheist Dad podcast. Wherever you happen to be, whenever you happen to be watching or listening to this, and whatever condition you're in, however you're feeling, if you're feeling good, keep at it. If you're not so good, I hope things get better. And remember to look after yourself. Self-care isn't a bad thing. So anyway, this is part 2 of reading On the Jews and Their Lies by Martin Luther. Now, a couple of things I want to get out of the way first before I get into the reading. I'm not reading this because I'm anti-Semitic. I want to make that clear. I'm not here to promote these ideas. I'm here to discuss them. One of the reasons I chose this book was because usually whenever arguments about Hitler and morality get brought up, one of the salient points is that Hitler seemed to have a thing for Luther. And one of the things Luther did was write a book literally called On the Jews and Their Lies. Hello, writer 724. I hope you're feeling better by the end of this. So Luther wrote a book called On the Jews and Their Lies, and yeah, it's interesting that speaking of a writer 724, she grew up in a Lutheran environment. I used to go to a Lutheran church myself, and barely any mention of... Actually, hold on, go back one step further. The whole Protestant movement. I spent, a decade and a half in the Protestant movement through various denominations, and very rarely was the issue of the issue of Luther being a raging anti-Semite brought up. So anyway, so I'm reading this book because I want to discuss the ideas contained therein, and I don't think we should shy away from these kind of debates, from these kind of discussions. There's a saying that sunlight is the best disinfectant, and I think if we can understand what these people were thinking, then yeah, we can improve our own understanding. That's not to say we take these ideas on board. I'm definitely not saying that. I'm just saying that we can understand from their perspective, learn from their mistakes, see why they said the kind of things they did, and so we can improve as a society. And I love writer 724's comment. Yeah, Luther's not so great parts were glossed over at best, ignored at worst. Yep. And we need to know our history to do our best to learn, grow, and not repeat it. Exactly. But also, I chose this book because, again, that connection between Hitler and Luther is something that does get overlooked. And yeah, like when I was in the how can I say it, like most apologists will go, Hitler is the result of what happens when evolutionary teaching is allowed to take over society, or when a society forgets God, or like just dumb stuff like that. But what apologists don't realise is the very strong religious connection between Hitler's ideology and Lutheran ideology, Lutheran thought. So anyway, so if you do, in the show notes, there should be a link to the book, so if you want to get it, grab it. Unfortunately, the PDF I've got doesn't have the pages numbered, but if you look on if you're on the screen, on the page on the left... Oh, I think I have a guest. Please welcome Mr. Lewis Ungert. Mr. Lewis Ungert.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Hold on. Why is my... I'm good. How about yourself?
I am doing great. I'm doing great.
Excellent, excellent. And I hope you appreciated the very gentle ribbing I gave you this morning. I won't. Not that I'm being monetized in the first place, but I won't mention what the topic was. But yeah, I thought
No,
you walked into it, Lewis. You just walked into it. It's like
you are correct. You are correct. I had nothing. I gave up. So yeah. But how are you doing?
no. Oh, look. Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. I was going to start this stream earlier, but I had a good opportunity to spend some one-on-one time with my kids, and I thought, oh yeah, like raging anti-Semitism from the 1500s can wait. My daughter can't. So
That's a good choice. That's a good
anyway,
choice.
Rider724 says hello, Lewis.
Hello.
And make sure your headphones are on and working. Yes, I forgot to. Me personally, I forgot to. Change my audio settings before we started. So I am a doofus. So yeah. Now, there was a very special guest that I was hoping to have on board. He was a little bit non-committal, but I've given him the link, and if he pops in, he pops in.
Great. Okay.
So we'll see how that goes. But yeah. Yes.
So just you and I today, huh? No Jax. Huh?
No, Jax is she's listening. She's posting snippy comments.
Okay.
She's posting snippy comments, but yeah, no, she's not ready for. I think she's more in listening mode today rather than speaking mode.
Makes sense. Good.
So, Lewis, do you have the book ready?
Would you mind dropping the link again for it? Or I might be able to find it if you
No,
give me a
no,
second,
no,
but,
no.
yeah.
That's good. No, that's cool. That's cool. I will. I just have to find where I linked it because Lewis. Oh, hold on. I know where I can get it because I.
Wait, I got it. I got it. I found
good.
it.
I was about
Okay.
to. No, good stuff. Good stuff. Yep. Jack says I'm here, and her allergies. Yeah. Talking will make her lose
Understood.
her voice.
Yep. Understood.
So she's in listening mode, not talking mode.
Makes sense.
Anyway, while you're getting ready, I will start the. I'll start where it says so up the top of the page where it says furthermore in 3, 2, 1.
Wait a second. Where?
Oh, yes.
That's okay. Yeah. What? How you doing? We're starting. What page are we on?
Unfortunately, the PDF isn't numbered, but at the top of the page, there's 2 lines, and then the next line says furthermore.
Okay.
So it's about 5 pages in, about 5 or 6 pages in. Furthermore, even if that's cool. I'll read. You catch up.
I'll keep looking. Right.
Yeah, cool.
Go ahead.
But it's about 6 or 7 pages in, I think, from the start. Furthermore, even if the Jews were 7 times blinder than they are, if that were possible, they would still have to see that Esau or Edom, as far as his physical birth is concerned, was as noble as Jacob, since he was not only the son of the same father, Isaac, and of the same mother, Rebekah, but he was also the firstborn, and primogeniture at that time conferred the highest nobility over against the other children. But what did his equal birth, or even his primogeniture, by virtue of which he was far nobler than Jacob, benefit him? He was still not numbered among God's people, although he called Abraham his grandfather, and Sarah his grandmother, just as Jacob did. Indeed, as has already been said, even more validly than did Jacob. Conversely, Abraham himself, as well as Sarah, had to regard him as their grandson, the son of Isaac and Rebekah. They even had to regard him as the firstborn and the nobler, and Jacob as the lesser. But tell me, what good did his physical birth and his noble blood inherited from Abraham do him? Someone may interpose that Esau forfeited his honour because he became evil, etc. We must rejoin, first of all, that the question at issue is whether nobility of blood in itself is so valid before God that one could thereby be or become God's people. If it is not, why then do the Jews exalt this birth so highly before other children of men? But if it is valid, why then does God not guard it from falling? For if God regards physical birth as adequate for making the descendants of the holy patriarchs his people, he dare not let them become evil, thereby losing his people and becoming a non-God. If he does, however, let them become evil, it is certain that he does not regard birth as a means of yielding or producing a people for him. And Jax has commented, a bad brother? That's an interesting point. And,
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be pissed too if my brother managed to hoodwink my birthright from me. Lewis, here's a question that you may have a bit more of a nuanced answer for than me.
Sure.
The story of Esau and Jacob.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you stand on the whole Esau gave up his birthright, Esau lost favor with God, Jacob I loved but Esau I hated? Where do you stand? What are your brief thoughts on that?
So I believe that God, and actually it's interesting what Martin Luther's talking about here, is that Esau had primogeniture, so he was the firstborn, which in history made you the chosen one in the family, right? You got the inheritance, or at least a larger inheritance. And God actually, throughout the Old Testament and into the New Testament, consistently picks the non-firstborn. So he consistently picks those that are lowly of birth. And when Rachel, or Rebecca, their mother, was having them as twins, God told her that Jacob would rule over Esau. And so
the younger will serve the older will serve the younger, I think the line went.
So she knew that, and I'm sure she communicated that to Jacob, and they did do some shenanigans to get Isaac on board with that. And whether or not that was fair, I mean, Jacob clearly was a trickster and was not, in many ways, was not treating Esau well, and you kind of see that in the story. But I do believe that God had chosen the lesser, chosen the younger, to ultimately be the one to carry on God's line. So I think that's what that story is about. But by the way, you're getting a lot of background noise, like breathing and moving around and stuff.
Okay,
yeah.
Sorry, yeah. I'm still a little bit on the hop. Okay, let me just keep a little bit still.
It's like a really hot mic or something. Like
yeah, I have to. I thought I had the automatic settings turned on, but all right, let me just try that for now. Now, so Writer for Life 724 has said, so it was a kind of a literary theme to pick someone second, third, etc. Born person to be held higher up than the first. It's hard to say, because if the whole thing of Jewish culture was that, it's kind of funny, like, if the Jews were God's people, and the Jews had this thing about primogeniture, then why does God himself have this, well, as you say, have this theme where, how can I say, like, has this theme where, you know, he doesn't always pick the firstborn, he picks maybe the second, third, or lowly born. So it seems that God is giving, either the Jews can't match God's standard, or God is giving a different standard to the Jews than he does for himself.
Yeah, I think what God is doing, and I think actually Martin Luther is correct thus far. Obviously, this document we're reading will take a turn for the worse at some point in time, but thus far, I think he's actually making a good point. And the point is, and God says this when he chooses, if you remember the story of him choosing David, when Samuel came to Jesse and he asked to see the son so that he could select the next king. Jesse rolled out all his older sons, and Samuel says, well, there's one that's missing. and he picked the youngest son, David, to be the next king. And I think Martin Luther actually is kind of nailing it here, is that a major theme in the Bible is overturning all those traditional ideas of birth, your race being superior, your birth being superior. Those were all deeply ingrained in ancient cultures. Mm-hmm. And God is constantly throughout the Bible overturning that theme and kind of turning it on its head and picking the lower, picking the younger, as a way of kind of teaching humanity that principle that kind of the humble will rule over the strong. And that's a theme that you see most clearly in the story of Jesus. But
Jesus was the firstborn.
The humble overcoming the weak, though, is what I'm saying. So Jesus, obviously a lowly carpenter, overcoming all the powerful in Israel, overcoming Caesar, overcoming all. So like this lowly overcoming the more powerful. And it actually is a really encouraging story for anybody that is not born rich and is not born powerful. It's this idea. If you remember the story Jesus told of the widow, where he's standing in the temple watching everybody donate, and the rich come in and they donate all this money, and the widow comes in and donates just a little penny, but because she gave everything she could, it ultimately, he says, she gave more than everybody else. So it's this idea that it's the humble in many ways are greater than the strong in the eyes of God, is a theme that goes throughout the Bible and is definitely echoed in the New Testament by Jesus.
Yep. Maybe now the thing is, though, I would say as an atheist, did those things really happen, or were they written as a literary device to reflect religio-cultural values? Now, I think you and I can argue this all day long, but yeah. Anyway, I'll get him. I'll get him with the book. Otherwise, we'll be arguing theology rather than reading the book.
Sure. Yeah. But I do think that's a good. I mean, that's exactly what Martin Luther's kind of saying here, which actually is a really good point. And like when we started off talking about this in light of the Nazis using Martin Luther, which they did, but this actually would very, very much contradict them, right? So the Nazis believed that they were superior based on their ethnicity, and right here he actually had that you're not better based on your blood. And if you remember, the Nazis had that phrase blood and soil, so it actually is a very, very nice contradiction to them in what they claimed. But anyway, all right, let's go. Yeah.
No worries. In the second place, Esau was not ejected from the people of God because he became evil later on. Nor was Jacob counted among the people of God in view of his subsequent good life. No, while they were both still in their mother's womb, the word of God distinguished between the two. Jacob was called, Esau was not, in accordance with the words, the elder shall serve the younger. Genesis 25:23. This was not at all affected by the fact that they were both carried under the same mother's heart, that they were both nourished with the same milk and blood of one and the same mother, Rebekah, that they were born of her at the same time. So one must say that no matter how identical flesh, blood, milk, body, and mother were in this instance, they could not help Esau, nor could they hinder Jacob from acquiring the grace by which people become God's children or his people. Decisive here are the word and calling, which ignore the birth. Ishmael, too, can say that he is equally a true and natural son of Abraham. But what does his physical birth avail him? Despite this, he has to yield up the home and heritage of Abraham and leave it to his brother Isaac. You may say that Ishmael was born of Hagar, while Isaac was born of Sarah. If anything, this strengthens our argument, for Isaac's birth from Sarah was affected by the word of God, and not by flesh and blood, since Sarah was past the natural age for bearing children. To discuss the question of birth a bit further, although Ishmael is Abraham's flesh and blood and his natural son, still the flesh and blood of such a holy father does not help him. it rather harms him, because he has no more than flesh and blood from Abraham, and does not also have God's word in his favour. The fact that Isaac is descended from the blood of Abraham does not handicap him, even though it was useless to Ishmael, because he has the word of God, which distinguishes him from his brother Ishmael, who is of the flesh and blood of the same Abraham. And just looking at Writer for Life 724, always good to see the full context of statements so you get a better feeling of if something may have been cherry-picked or not. And, ooh, Ishmael, there's a topic to get into, but I don't want to dig too deep into my thoughts and objections to that story. This is, now, I suppose another question, maybe just going on from the previous section we just covered. I sense a little bit of Calvinism in here, or this is my bastardized understanding of Calvinism, in that no one, how can I say, like, it seems that God stacks the cards against you. And if God stacks the cards against you, there's nothing you can do to reverse that. What do you think about that?
Am I a Calvinist? I would say I believe ultimately in the sovereignty of God, but I would kind of, I don't know that that's what Martin Luther's getting at here. I think his main point is, and he's really hammering home over and over again, is just this idea that you should not trust in your ethnicity to save you. I think that's primarily what he's getting at here, paragraph after paragraph. Now, whether I think there is an element of predestination in terms of Isaac and Ishmael and Esau and all that, but I don't think that's Martin Luther's main point.
No, but as a general aside, for someone who is as studied as you are and as opinionated as you are,
Yeah, so I'll tell you, my personal view is one that I think that I don't know that the two views, so within Christianity, there's kind of Calvinism or Reform thinking, and then there's Arminianism, which is, so Calvinism would emphasis on predestination, Arminianism would kind of emphasize freedom of choice, free will. And my personal view is that they're talking past each other a little bit. And I think that there's an element to which God ordains all things, but that doesn't take away our free will and our ability to do what we want. And I think it's a bit of a mystery, but it's one of those things that I view Christians, very intelligent Christians, as kind of talking past each other, and very smart Christians as arguing with each other over that. And I'm a little bit in the middle, where I see good points on both sides, and I certainly would view God as sovereign, but I also don't think that in any way means that some people are just screwed or whatever. And actually, I would say with the story of Esau and Ishmael, I don't know that any of them are in hell. Like, I think that the choice here that God's talking about primarily has to do with who would be the father of the nation of Israel, and ultimately the father of the Messiah. I don't think it's necessarily a question of who goes to hell and who doesn't. So
no, fair enough. All right, I'll carry on. Why should so much ado be made of this? After all, if birth counts before God, I can claim to be just as noble as any Jew. Yes, just as noble as Abraham himself, as David, as all the holy prophets and apostles. Nor will I owe them any thanks if they consider me just as noble as themselves before God, by reason of my birth. And if God refuses to acknowledge my nobility and birth as the equal to that of Isaac, Abraham, David, and all the saints, I maintain that he is doing me an injustice, and that he is not a fair judge. For I will not give it up, and neither Abraham, David, prophets, apostles, nor even an angel in heaven shall deny me the right to boast that Noah, so far as physical birth or flesh and blood is concerned, is my true natural ancestor, and that his wife, whoever she may have been, is my true natural ancestress. For we are all descended, since the deluge, from that one Noah. We did not descend from Cain, for his family perished forever in the flood together with many of the cousins, brothers-in-law, and friends of Noah. All right, and Writer for Life 724 actually asked an interesting question. Is Ishmael in heaven? Wasn't Ishmael part of the catalyst for Islam? Now, their story goes that they came from the Ishmael line, but again, that's just my, I suppose, bastardized understanding. I don't know like that was the understanding that my fundamentalist pastors gave me, but yeah. What are your thoughts on that? On the comparative?
I mean, I think it's number one. I think in reality, so if we just take a pure scientific view, I don't think there's any way to trace who was descended from Ishmael. But I would say it is a very interesting thing that if you read about Ishmael and you read about, I'm trying to look at the line that it has, but it's something along the lines of, and he will go and live in tents or something like that. So, and it's in Genesis chapter 21. He grew up. So anyway, when he's sent away, God gives some kind of promise to him, and I'm looking for it real quick as we talk.
I think it was also that he would also be the father of many. Is my vague understanding.
Yeah. So he basically he went away, and there was this promise that he would be many, and he would be a mighty nation. And he would go and be a powerful nation. And it's interesting that from out of him, the Israel claims that that they were descended from, or I'm sorry, Islam claims that they are descended from him. So it is an interesting thing, just if you look at it from a historical standpoint. Like in the Bible, there's this promise that there would be these people that would go dwell in the desert, and that they would be a pain in the side of the children of Abraham. And now there's thousands of years later, there is this strife between Jews and Israel, or Islam, and Jews claim to be from Isaac, and Islam claims to be from Ishmael. It's a crazy coincidence. So I do find it really interesting, but I don't, beyond that, I don't know what to think of it. So.
No, fair enough. Okay, and Writer for Life 724 has put down Genesis 17. He'd also create 12 princes. Lewis, do you want to look that up while I continue reading the book? Let's see what verse Writer for Life 724 is. 3, 2, 1. I also boast that Japheth, Noah's firstborn son, is my true natural ancestor, and his wife, whoever she may have been, is my true natural ancestress. For as Moses informs us in Genesis 10, he is the progenitor of all us Gentiles. Thus Shem, the second son of Noah, and all of his descendants have no grounds to boast over against his older brother Japheth because of their birth. Indeed, if birth is to play a role, then Japheth as the oldest son and the true heir has reason for boasting over against Shem, his younger brother, and Shem's descendants, whether these be called Jews or Ishmaelites or Edomites. But what does physical primogeniture help the good Japheth, our ancestor? Nothing at all. Shem enjoys precedence, not by reason of birth, which would accord precedence to Japheth, but because God's word and calling are the arbiter here. And, yes, a Writer for Life, 724. It's at least an interesting bit of food for thought. That I will completely agree with. All right, have you found anything, Lewis?
I did find the mention of the 12 princes, which that comes in Genesis chapter 17, which basically Abraham is being told that his second son, Isaac, would be the child of the promise, and Abraham feels bad for Ishmael, and God basically says, hey, don't worry about Ishmael, I will take care of him, and essentially says, that he will be the father of great nations and the father of 12 princes, or 12 rulers. I don't know what it's talking about there, though. I don't.
But but
Yeah.
yeah, sorry.
So I'm
That
sorry. Go
sounds
ahead.
like sounds like my bad remembering of what God promised to Ishmael in order to buy him off. Yeah, stop hassling the good guy of the story. You go away. Oh, this is your hush money. This is your hush money. This is your NDA. This is yeah.
I would take it as God pouring out his blessing upon Abraham. That Abraham was rightly worried about his teenage son, and God said, "Don't worry, your teenage son will be fine." I think that's really
I'm a very cynical atheist, Lewis. I could go back to the beginning of the world and trace our common ancestry from Adam and Eve, later from Shem, Enoch, Kenan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech. For all of these are our ancestors just as well as the Jews, and we share equally in the honour, nobility, and fame of descent from them as do the Jews. We are their flesh and blood, just the same as Abraham and all his seed are. For we were in the loins of the same holy fathers in the same measure as they were, and there is no difference whatsoever with regard to the birth or flesh and blood, as reason must tell us. Therefore, the blind Jews are truly stupid fools, much more absurd than the Gentiles, to boast so before God of their physical birth, though they are by reason of it no better than the Gentiles, since we both partake of one birth, one flesh and blood, from the very first, best, and holiest ancestors. Neither one can reproach or upbraid the other about some peculiarity without implicating himself at the same time. But let us move on. David lumps us together nicely and convincingly when he declares in Psalm 51:5, "Behold, I was brought forth in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me. Now go, whether you are Jew or Gentile, born of Adam or Abraham or Enoch or David, and boast before God of your fine nobility, of your exalted lineage, your ancient ancestry. Here you learn that we all are conceived and born in sin by father and mother, and no human being is excluded." But what does it mean to be born in sin, other than to be born under God's wrath and condemnation, so that by nature or birth we are unable to be God's people or children, and our birth, glory, and nobility, our honour and praise denote nothing more, and can denote nothing else than that, in default of anything to our credit other than our physical birth, we are condemned sinners, enemies of God, and in his disfavour? There, Jew, you have your boast, and we Gentiles have ours together with you, as well as you with us. Now go ahead and pray that God might respect your nobility, your race, your flesh and blood. He's got away with words, doesn't he? Good old Luther. He's really like Jackson yesterday's episode. She noted she left a comment on the YouTube video for the episode we did yesterday that he is very stream of consciousness where like he starts off very very hot. A couple of pages in, he's simmered, and then there's a couple of things I've just read where I think he's starting to climb the mountain again.
That's true. Hey, jumping back to our last conversation
of course.
About Ishmael, in Genesis chapter 16, verse 12, it has this line when talking about Ishmael being born, and God tells Abraham, he says, he will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand will be against him, and he will live in hostility towards his brothers. That would be the children of Israel. So interesting forecast. In light of the claims today, it's an interesting statement there that he'll be in hostility. Yep. So.
Indeed. Now, where was I? This is at the bottom of the second page on the screen, and once we get past this paragraph, I'll switch the pages over. This I wanted to say for the strengthening of our faith, For the Jews will not give up their pride and their boasting about their nobility and lineage. As we said above, their hearts are hardened. Our people, however, must be on their guard against them, lest they be misled by this impenitent, accursed people who give God the lie and haughtily despise all the world. For the Jews would like to entice us Christians to their faith, and they do this wherever they can. If God is to become like us to if God is to become gracious also to them, the Jews, they must first of all banish such blasphemous prayers and songs that boast so arrogantly about their heritage from their synagogues, from their hearts, and from their lips. For such prayers ever increase and sharpen God's wrath against them. However, they will not do this, nor will they humble themselves abjectly, except for a few individuals whom God draws unto himself particularly and delivers from their terrible ruin. That is, I see a bit of a predestination in that, Lewis. How about you?
I don't. I mean, I can see. I mean, I think Luther definitely believed in predestination, but I don't think that's his main point there. I think he's really laser focused on this idea that I guess the Jews he met are basing everything, but whether or not he's fairly characterizing them, but they're basing kind of their whole sense of a basis on their ethnicity. And he's basically saying, stop trusting your ethnicity. If you want to be good with God, you have to stop trusting your ethnicity. And so he's kind of saying that over and over again to them. And I feel like he's saying that here is like, they need to stop praying prayers about being glad about being Jewish and being male. And they need to start just humbling themselves before God. And so he's kind of saying that over and over again. And I feel like that's his main focus. I think you're right that there is kind of a hint of God choosing and God making the decision, but I think he's also has an eye towards just making that point over and over again, which is a warning to the Jews, which is interesting because he wrote this letter saying that he's writing it to Christians, but it almost seems like he's kind of talking to Jewish people while he's doing it. I don't know if you're picking up on that, but it seems like a lot of this is actually would not be that interesting to a Christian. It seems like most of it is aimed at Jewish people, not at Christians. I could be wrong, but
no, fair enough. And I do like Writer for Life 724's comment. If humility is huge in the Bible, not being humble may be seen as offensive to Luther at least. And yeah, but I just wonder if yeah, it's interesting. Maybe he's selectively looking at humility, in order to, like, maybe he's like ignoring all the good stuff about the Jews in order to focus on the bad, and then yeah, interesting. Anyway, I will.
Well, let me say,
sorry,
I definitely agree with that. So, like, I definitely agree that I'm guessing that he's being one dimensional here with the Jewish people of his day, as well as, I mean, we all know Jewish people in our lives that this does not accurately reflect. So I think it maybe he's met somebody that was like this, but I don't think it's a fair characterization.
No, but it's a bit like me meeting Kent Hovind and going, oh my God, all these creationists are just idiots.
Right. Yeah. It's taking a whatever subsample he has met and drawing conclusions based on
cherry picking. So, I think we call it. But anyway, here we go. The other boast and nobility over which the Jews gloat, and because of which they haughtily and vainly despise all mankind, is their circumcision, which they receive from Abraham. My God, what we Gentiles have to put up with in their synagogues, prayers, songs, and doctrines. What a stench we poor people are in their nostrils, because we are not circumcised. Indeed, God himself must again submit to miserable torment, if I may put it thus, as they confront him with inexpressible presumption and boast. Praise be thou, King of the world, who singled us out from all the nations, and sanctified us by the covenant of circumcision. And similarly with many other words, the tenor of all of which is that God should esteem them above and the rest of the world, because they, in compliance with his decree, are circumcised, and that he should condemn all other people, just as they do and wish to do. In this boast of nobility, they glory as much as they do in their physical birth. Consequently, I believe that if Moses himself would appear together with Elijah and their Messiah, and would try to deprive them of this boast, or forbid such prayers and doctrine, they would probably consider all three of them to be the three worst devils in hell, and they will be at a loss to know how to curse and damn them adequately, to say nothing of believing them. For they have decided amongst themselves that Moses, together with Elijah and the Messiah, should endorse circumcision, yes, rather that they should help to strengthen and praise such arrogance and pride in circumcision, that these should, like themselves, look upon all Gentiles as awful filth and stench, because they are not circumcised. Moses, Elijah, and the Messiah must do that, and that they prescribe, think, and wish. They insist that they are right, and if God himself were to do other than they think, he would be in the wrong. That's that is interesting. And just going through some of the comments here in the chat, or Ray yes, I think, or yeah, either Kent Hovind or Ray Comfort. What else we got here? I still find it amusing that a lot of Christians circumcise their kids later on, removing this particular argument for a while. And also, I'm sure Luther would roll in his grave knowing this little tidbit. Rider for Life 724, which little tidbit? For the circumcision, yes. I'm not going to ask you if you're circumcised, Lewis. That's probably, I think it's a little bit too personal. But I was part of a panel with the who was it with the Atheist Network group discussing circumcision, and there was a person on there who circumcised their kids mostly through cultural reasons. And she actually then stated that she felt like she actually apologized to her sons for doing so. And I just find it interesting that in this covenant where we don't have to circumcise our kids, and in a country that prides itself as being a Christian nation, what are your thoughts on people circumcising children for cultural reasons?
Yeah, so I will say there's a giant difference between male circumcision and female circumcision. The Bible never requires female circumcision. That is a horrible practice that just ruins the sexual experience for women and is intended to ruin the sexual experience. I was a male circumcision, and I guess I will go ahead and be open with this. I am circumcised, and I don't think it affects my life negatively, and I don't think that it has been harmful to me, and I enjoy things just fine. So I don't think it's when we look at the effect that it has. I think a lot of the things God's doing with a lot of the cleanliness laws, and I would argue including circumcision, is that in places that don't have great sanitation and that kind of thing, there's some of these laws actually have very big practical benefits to them. And what they've found, like in Western countries, circumcision isn't not that much healthier than non-circumcision, and for that reason, like the Pediatrics Association in the U.S. is kind of indifferent towards whether you get circumcised or not. But in like third world countries where there's not good sanitation, it actually is beneficial and does help reduce some sexually transmitted diseases and other things as well. So I think there's some benefit there. But I guess long story short, that's a long answer. I think I agree with St. Paul where he says both circumcision and not circumcision are, it doesn't matter. So I think it's just a parent's choice. I don't think you should do it because you feel like you have to. I think you should do it for the right reasons and think about health and that kind of stuff. But
no, fair enough. Okay, well, I'll continue on reading then. 3, 2, 1. Now, just behold these miserable, blind, and senseless people. In the first place, as I said previously in regards to physical birth, if I were to concede that circumcision is sufficient to make them a people of God, or to sanctify and set them apart before God from all other nations, then the conclusion would have to be this: whoever was circumcised could not be evil, nor could he be damned. Nor would God permit this to happen, if he regarded circumcision as imbued with such holiness and power. Just as we Christians say, whoever has faith cannot be evil, and cannot be damned so long as faith endures. For God regards faith as so precious, valuable, and powerful that it will surely sanctify and prevent him who has faith and retains his faith from being lost or becoming evil. But I shall let this go for now. In the second place, we note here again how the Jews provoke God's anger more and more with such prayer. For there they stand and defame God with a blasphemous, shameful, and impudent lie. They are so blind and stupid that they see neither the words found in Genesis 17 nor the whole of Scripture, which mightily and explicitly condemns this lie. For in Genesis 17:12, Moses states that Abraham was ordered to circumcise not only his son Isaac, who at the time was not yet born, and the males born in his house, whether sons or servants, including the slaves. All of these were circumcised on one day together with Abraham. Ishmael too, who at the time was 13 years of age, as the text informs us. Thus, the covenant or decree of circumcision encompasses the entire seed of all the descendants of Abraham, particularly Ishmael, who was the first seed of Abraham to be circumcised. Accordingly, Ishmael is not only the equal of his brother Isaac, but he might, even if this were to be esteemed before God, be entitled to boast of his circumcision more than Isaac, since he was circumcised 1 year sooner. In view of this, the Ishmaelites might well enjoy a higher repute than the Israelites, for their forefather Ishmael was circumcised before Isaac, the progenitor of the Israelites, was born. And just checking out the comments in the chat. Whoever has faith can't be evil. I hard disagree, Luther. That's a very good point. And cue all the men slowly crossing their legs. Yeah, like I'm just trying. That's a very good point. Like how many of them? Like, you know, so you had like Abraham got the cut. His sons got the cut, and all their slaves. It's like
that was probably not a fun day for everybody, right?
Yeah, I'm sure not much housework got done in the few weeks after. Yeah. But that actually reminds me of a story in I forget what part of Genesis it was, where I think it was Dinah. Dinah got raped by a couple of I forget what tribe it was. Then
it was men from the city of Shechem. So
that's the one. Yes, that's the one. And they plot to take revenge, and so in order to bring peace, you know, say, look, we'll accept your apology if everyone in your town gets circumcised. And then while everyone was writhing around in pain the next day, they got ambushed.
Right, Luther could have brought that story up as an example of not good people that were circumcised.
Not good people. Not good people of faith, and they're not good people that are circumcised. But yeah, I will continue. Why then do the Jews lie so shamefully before God in their prayer and preaching, as though circumcision was theirs alone, through which they were set apart from all other nations, and thus they alone are God's holy people? They should really, if they were capable of it, be a bit ashamed before the Ishmaelites, the Edomites, and other nations, when they consider that they were at all times a small nation, scarcely a handful of people in comparison with others who were also Abraham's seed, and were also circumcised, and who indubitably transmitted such a command of their father Abraham to their descendants. and that the circumcision transmitted to the one son, Isaac, is rather insignificant when compared with the circumcision transmitted to Abraham's other sons. For Scripture records that Ishmael, Abraham's son, became a great nation, that he begot 12 princes. There you go, Jax. Also, that the sixth son of Keturah, Genesis 25:1, possessed much greater areas of land than Israel, and undoubtedly these observed the rite of circumcision handed down to them by their fathers. Now, since circumcision, as decreed by God in Genesis 17, is practiced by so many nations, beginning with Abraham, whose seed they all are the same as Isaac and Jacob, and since there is no difference in this regard between them and the children of Israel, what are the Jews really doing when they praise and thank God in their prayers for singling them out by circumcision from all other nations, for sanctifying them, and for making them his own people? This is what they are doing. They are blaspheming God and giving him the lie concerning his commandment and his words, where he says, Genesis 17:12, that circumcision shall not be prescribed for Isaac and his descendants alone, but for all the seed of Abraham. The Jews have no favoured position exalting them above Ishmael by reason of circumcision, or above Edom, Midian, Ephah, Epher, etc., all of whom are reckoned in Genesis as Abraham's seed. For they were all circumcised and made heirs of circumcision, the same as Israel. Now, what does it benefit Ishmael that he is circumcised? What does it benefit Edom that he is circumcised? Edom, who, moreover, is descended from Isaac, who was set apart, and not from Ishmael? What does it benefit Midian and his brothers, born of Keturah, that they are circumcised? They are, for all of that, not God's people, neither their descent from Abraham, nor their circumcision commanded by God helps them. If circumcision does not help them in becoming God's people, how can it help the Jews? For it is one and the same circumcision, decreed by one and the same God, and there is one and the same Father, flesh and blood, or descent, that is common to all. There is absolute equality. There is no difference, no distinction among them all, so far as circumcision and birth are concerned. That's interesting how, Luther does make a good point here that when he says Midian was one of those nations that that Moses led Israel to destroy, and yet they also were part of the circumcision covenant. You there, Lewis? Oh, I think Lewis has dropped off.
I am here.
Ah,
I'm
okay.
sorry.
No,
I
that's
was
good.
on mute there. No, yeah,
No, that's
that's a
good.
good point. That's an interesting observation that he made, and that you picked up on that. But yeah, that is an interesting thing. So.
And then on the reverse, there was can't quote chapter and verse, but where God tries to kill Moses because his son is not circumcised as well.
Yes,
So
he threatens Moses' family, or basically threatens Moses because Moses has failed to follow the covenant, right?
Actually, no, I don't think it's just a threat, because it does actually say in the text that God attempted to kill Moses, and it was only because Zipporah cut the foreskin off the son. That and just looking at the comment here from Rider for Life 724, just checked, in Islam, circumcision isn't compulsory, but is justified for cleanliness, at least today. Not sure about Luther's time. Given they were primitive, and they didn't quite have that wide school of thought that we have today, I would be very surprised if they did make circumcision optional, because we see the Jews, they in this modern age where we can check things out at the touch of a screen, where we can share information with the touch of a button, where we can talk to anyone on literally the other side of the world, as if they were standing face to face in front of us. The Jews, they buy appliances that literally have Sabbath mode built into them because they're afraid that God would be offended if like a light turns on or if a flame turns on or something like that. So I'd be very surprised if Islam did have some sort of optional requirement. But yeah, maybe that point might be worth. But yeah, Lewis, what are your thoughts so far on this?
Yeah, I
Before
mean,
continue on.
I think that he is he's kind of moved from the ethnicity question to the circumcision question, right? Which again, it's interesting. This is supposedly written for Christians, but it just seems like he's arguing with Jewish people. You can tell he's had these debates with people. You know, like we said at the beginning yesterday when we were talking, is he's has had friendships with Jewish people. He spent time in their community learning Hebrew, and this whole thing thus far seems like he's basically debating them, right? Like it seems like he's taking their arguments and trying to argue why they're not true. You know, mostly from the Old Testament. You notice he's not quoting. If he was talking with Christians, he'd be quoting the New Testament, but he's almost completely using the Old Testament to make his point.
Indeed,
right?
Indeed, it's interesting. Anyway, I will continue on. Now I've just forgot where I was, and Jax is probably going to shoot me again. Therefore, it is not a clever and ingenious, but a clumsy, foolish, and stupid lie when the Jews boast of their circumcision before God, presuming that God should regard them graciously for that reason, though they should certainly know from Scripture that they are not the only race circumcised in compliance with the God's decree, and that they cannot on that account be God's special people. Something more, different, and greater is necessary for that, since the Ishmaelites, the Edomites, the Midianites, and other descendants of Abraham may equally comfort themselves with this glory, even before God himself. For with regard to birth and circumcision these are, as already said, their equals. Perhaps the Jews will declare that the Ishmaelites and Edomites, etc., do not observe the rite of circumcision as strictly as they do. In addition to cutting off the foreskin of a male child, the Jews force the skin back on the little penis and tear it open with sharp fingernails, as one reads in their books. Thus they cause extraordinary pain to the child, without and against the command of God, so that the father, who should really be happy over the circumcision, stands there and weeps as his child's cries pierce his heart. We answer roundly that such an addendum is their own invention. Yes, it was inspired by the accursed devil, and in contradiction to God's command, since Moses says in Deuteronomy 4:2 and 12:32, "You shall not add to the word which I command you, nor take from it." With such a devilish supplement, they ruin their circumcision, so that in the sight of God, no other nation practices circumcision less than they, since with such wanton disobedience, they append and practice this damnable supplement. That's the first I've heard of. This. And reading Writer for Life 724's comment. Ow.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd cry too. That's
terrible. Yeah, that's I wonder what he's talking about there. I've never heard. I don't think that's true for Jewish people today, and I don't know enough about it. But that seems super horrible. But
indeed, but it might be one of those medieval things that, like for example, bloodletting was an accepted medical practice back in medieval times, and maybe they thought that But I do like Writer for Life 724's comment. Moses, don't add. Documentary theory. You sure about that? Gotta love a documentary theory. But yeah, no, actually, I'll ask him some Jewish people I know, and if this rabbi who I was trying to get on came on, he'd be able to answer. But anyway, that's that's for another time. So we'll maybe go. Actually, no, we're on an hour already, so I might leave it here.
Okay. Sounds good.
Actually, hold. Let me
That's
just.
a brutal paragraph to end on. It's just like,
Yeah, I know. Maybe, hopefully, next time we will get something a little bit more happier and a little bit less severe.
yeah.
But
You can tell why this wasn't. Remember, we started off and I was like, this was not a popular book by Luther. Like, it wasn't commonly read by anyone, and you can tell why not. Like, this is not this isn't something you would read in church or whatever. Right?
No,
So,
it's. I can't imagine. I can't imagine Luther's teachings being, or this being, even part of the Sunday school curriculum.
right. Yeah. Jax wasn't learning this in Lutheran school. Right.
No. Anyway, Lewis, before I let you go, what's on the agenda for the rest of the day or the week or tomorrow, as it might be for you?
Yeah, just gonna try and do some writing today. I've got a stack of books in front of me, and I'm procrastinating as best I can to not actually write. But I should write, and I want to write. So I've got a bunch of stuff that I've got objectives and goals to personally write. So we'll see what happens. But
No worries. Dream, believe, achieve, I think is the wise words,
there you go.
as I say. And it's 11:46 where I am down in Melbourne, so it is almost lunchtime. And yeah, I wonder, and it's actually raining outside, so you can't really go out. And
How's the lockdown going? Are you going stir crazy, or are you surviving?
yeah, I've been stir crazy for quite a while, but now that we're used to it, like I've kind of settled in a little bit more.
Yeah.
The problem though is that the government just announced today there's like 200 new cases, which is the most that we've had for quite a while.
Yeah.
And not that I want to make this episode a COVID political rant, but what I think is that there's a paradox that happens. When the case numbers go up, restrictions get tighter. Restrictions get tighter. People start ignoring and just saying no, I don't give a stuff about this, and because they don't give a stuff about it, they then go out in the community, which then spreads the virus, which then adds to the case numbers, which then adds to the restrictions, which then adds to the apathy, which then adds to the case numbers, which then adds to the restrictions, which adds to the apathy and
Vicious circle.
and the
Right,
vicious
yeah.
circle. Yeah. So there may be. I know they have set a target for easing restrictions when I think like 75% of the population gets their first dose.
Did you? Yeah. Although Israel's got a very high vaccination rate, something like 75 or something, and they're having a lot of trouble right now. So who knows?
Yeah.
Feels like this will never be over, but I guess it's gotta end eventually. But
Indeed. Anyway, Lewis, thank you for being with me today.
hey, thanks a lot, Damien. It was good talking to you, and we'll talk to you soon. So thanks for having
No
me on.
worries. No worries. And to everyone else listening, watching this on the live stream, watching this on YouTube after it's been recorded, wherever you are in the world, whatever time of day it is, stay safe, look after yourself. My name is Damien, the tall, friendly atheist dad. Check me out on Twitter, twitter.com/TFADpod, facebook.com/TFADpod, www.tallfriendlyatheistdad.com, or anchor.fm/TFADad. Till next time, look after yourselves.